Hi, everybody. I'm your sponsor today. My name is Jason Gard from Essential Education, and you might remember us last year. We gave away a guide, 1,200 copies of a new retention guide last year at COABE in Nashville. They went like hotcakes, and it was nearly Beatlemania on the exhibit hall floor trying to get them, and then they were all gone. There's actually a pile of them at our exhibit in the exhibit hall if you didn't get one last year. This year, we have a new guide on overcoming adult learning challenges. I'm kind of brandishing it here. We printed twice as many. There's 2,500 copies of these down there. So we're hoping that you'll take some to your local program. Essential Education provides the ABE and HSE Academy Adaptive Online Learning Program, and we have designed it to deliver breakthroughs for the hardest to serve learners, as well as MSGs and accelerated credentialing across the board. Let me see, I was going to say something about how GED Academy in Maryland, for instance, can be targeted very easily to the area that the student has yet to pass on the GED test, hence your 3 out of 4 initiative. But this new guide is designed to, it's actually gathered a bunch of research from a national PLC. So it's not our advice to you, it's best practices from your peers in the field. It's current research, activities, and tools to boost engagement and uplift and empower every kind of learner, especially the hardest to serve learners. And I have some vouchers you can take to remind you to get your guide from the exhibit hall, but the clock is ticking. This conference is almost over. So we're going to start packing up between 1 and 3 in the exhibit hall, so please come and get a guide before then. You can use a voucher to get one, or you can just point at it and say, I want that, and we'll give you a couple of them. So we would love to hear about your adult educator challenges, not just adult learner challenges, but the educator challenges, and then give you all the time and support that we have to offer. So thank you for your time and your dedication to the field.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. We're about to get underway with our presentation content. Good morning. It's a little after 8 a.m. here Central Time, and I guess 9, a little after 9 Eastern. Anyway, we don't have to go through all the time zones, but good morning. We'll go into more of our introductions and things, but I'm Laura Ostrowski, and I'm excited to speak today about our 3 of 4, our Maryland 3 of 4 initiative, Fourth and Goal. So the beginnings of this presentation was largely as a result of a new, well, it'd been ongoing in Maryland for a few years now. When I started my role as GED administrator for the state of Maryland, we were already a part of a work group, GED state test administrators work group, really directed at 3 of 4 initiatives. Maryland's had not yet gotten off the ground at that time, but as Brian Smith from GED Testing Service shared yesterday, nationwide there are over 170,000 individuals who have passed 3 of their 4 GED tests. And so in Maryland, we really, I'll be honest, stood on the shoulders of some giants in terms of states who've already launched their initiatives, started their campaigns, states like Georgia, Illinois, Oregon, Virginia. Don't want to leave anybody out, but we really learned a lot of important lessons from other states to really to launch our initiative called Fourth and Goal. And we'll get more into the title and the initiative itself in just a moment. But I'll turn it over to my partner, Doug Weimer.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Doug Weimer. Just a quick disclaimer, because both Laura and I are Maryland State employees. So the content or opinions expressed in this presentation do not necessarily reflect or present the views, positions, or policies of the Maryland Department of Labor, nor does the mention of any trade names, commercial products, organizations imply an official endorsement by the Maryland Department of Labor. So as introductions, my name is Doug Weimer. I'm the Deputy Director of Adult Education and Literacy Services at the Maryland Department of Labor. The Maryland Department of Labor is the agency that oversees everything with adult education for the state of Maryland, including GED testing, the adult high school program, and also our Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act Title II funds, federal and state funds that support adult education programs.
And I'm Laura Ostrowski again, GED administrator and adult high school program supervisor, two of our high school diploma options for adults, two of those routes. I've been doing that for about a year and a half. Prior to that, I was an adult education program specialist in the Maryland Department of Labor. Prior to that, work in workforce development and as an adjunct instructor, teaching ABE, GED, and as an NEDP advisor assessor as well.
Okay, and we also don't want to leave out Ahu Moser, who is helping us with the chat. So if you're joining us online, please make sure you're using the chat function in the Hoover app. Please do not use the Q&A feature that's in the Zoom window. So if you are wanting to participate, we hope you will. Please make sure you're using the chat feature, and Ahu is going to monitor that for us. So we appreciate you joining us early in the morning on the last day of the conference. So we just want to do some quick check-ins with everybody. So if you are online, please feel free to either scan the QR code or you can follow that link to join us. If you're in the room, please pull out your cell phones and scan that QR code for us. I think the first question is probably already up for you, but I'm going to leave that up for just a minute so you can grab it. Just a few more moments. I think next year we should ask them for ring lights so that the lighting on the video is a little more flattering, but oh well, we live. Okay. So first question is, what is the Maryland State sport? So you should just be able to tap. Okay, we have someone that's going on and off for tennis. Several people chose football. Some people chose jousting. No one chose poor lacrosse. It's unfortunate. All right. So the Maryland State sport actually is jousting. I don't know why, but it is. That's the state sport for Maryland. So good for the two of you that got that one correct. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. Oh, this one. All right, where are you located? So obviously I don't mean where are you at this moment because we have a lot of dots in Texas, but where are you from? If you're joining us from home, please, to the best of your ability, tap your finger on that spot. I know for us in Maryland, it's kind of hard to make that work on a cell phone screen. All right, mostly Midwest to East Coast. Tennessee, Carolinas, Maryland, New York, New England. All right. I always want to make sure I include the territories in there because you never know, we may have someone from the territories. So I see Brenda Schofield, you raised your hand. If you have something you want to ask, please go ahead and type it in the chat window. All right, what is the official Maryland state cat? Get your brains working this morning. Oh no, went too far. Pull everywhere, it's not been working with me today. I apologize, you might have to vote one more time. That's okay, you get to try again in case you didn't like your first choice. Oh no, no love for the orange tabby? I have an orange tabby at home, so. Okay, so the majority rules, the state cat of Maryland actually is the calico. You have a calico? So at another presentation, we brought up that the calico is a state cat and everybody in the room wanted to look up what their state cat was. Found out that the state cat of Alaska is the lynx. Someone state cat was the bobcat. One state was the tabby. So yeah, pretty cool. Arbitrary, but cool. And then the last question is, what is your main role in adult education? It looks like I need to actually clear that. There we go. All right, so we got state staff, local staff, instructor. Okay, a decent mix. So just a little quiz to get us moving this morning. I'm gonna turn it back over to Laura.
Thank you. Thanks, Doug. Just to kind of go over briefly what we're going to be speaking about in our next hour together, want to talk through our high school diploma options in Maryland, high school diploma options for adults. Get into more of behind the scenes of what is the motivation of 3 of 4 in general, and then drill down on our response in Maryland, 4th and goal, in terms of like the beginnings, the development of the entire program and fund, and then our outreach and messaging, the launch of the campaign, and ongoing pursuits and learner achievement thus far. So like in many places, when we start to speak about the importance and the need for a high school diploma for adults, generally, 18 years and older, though not, in some instances we do service those who are 16 and 17. We're talking about looking at how we can, those impacts, what does having a high school diploma afford one? Well, in Maryland, the unemployment rate is nearly twice as low. I think we're talking 3% as compared to those without a high school diploma, close to 6%. Greater engagement in the workplace, higher, of course, median earnings. I think it's about $32,000 more for those with per year for high school diploma graduates. And really all throughout the conversation, we're happy to report and really proud to report in Maryland that all of these routes, the 3 routes we're about to discuss, lead to a Maryland high school diploma. That is the designation of the credential that is earned. And so just to kind of go through a little bit our options before we kind of dive into the specific pursuit with the GED test. In addition to the GED test in Maryland, we do offer the National External Diploma, or NEDP, and the Adult High School Program. All of these are operated within our offices at the Maryland Department of Labor. I'll put an asterisk next to the Adult High School Program that is co-operated in partnership with the Maryland State Department of Education. And the reason for that, as we drill down onto some of these options, is that the very structure, the paradigm of the program itself relies upon individuals completing Maryland high school graduation requirements. So talking a little bit further through these options, the adult high school program, we're looking at serving adults 21 and older. So it's kind of that specific set of individuals who have aged out of the K-12 system. Again, it is based on the requirements for Maryland high school graduation. So therefore, we are in close partnership with Maryland State Department of Education for this particular program. And individuals are participating in classes, much like high school classes, although in a kind of a reframing of sorts. Some of the the feedback that we've heard thus far, it's a fairly new option in Maryland since 2017. We've had the Maryland High School Adult High School program. And, after a lot of legislation and things like that have passed, I think our first programs opened in about 2020, 2021. We currently have 2 adult high schools. That program is growing. But again, individuals have the opportunity to re-envision, reimagine, and re-experience high school, but from a different perspective. There's a large focus on community, going through the classes, having those credits, working toward credits that one still needs in order to earn their Maryland High School Diploma. So, for anyone who feels a little bit disconnected or felt disconnected from high school in the K-12 system, there's an opportunity to re-engage. There's an opportunity to have that contact with peers, participate in extracurricular groups. We're very excited for the future of the adult high school program in Maryland. As far as the GED test, of course, we're familiar with that route. In Maryland, it is for 18 and older for the largest part, and part of that is because we do have a compulsory age attendance law in Maryland. Individuals are expected to stay in K-12 through the age of 18, although in some instances we have worked with 16 and 17-year-olds, very, very kind of specific. And then finally, the National External Diploma Program. Has anyone heard of the National External Diploma Program, just by maybe show of hands? Great, great. Good to know. And then that is for us 18 and older. It's a competency-based system where individuals are completing tasks toward high school graduation, and those tasks are aligned with the college and career readiness standards. So those are the three options that currently exist in Maryland. And so from that, we really wanted to focus on how can we, within this system, of course we offer the GED test, how can we drill down on some of those challenges that face GED test takers? Because each of our pathways, of course, appeals to and has different traits for individual characteristics. So when we're thinking about one of our largest by population pathways, the GED test, how can we begin to start to envision and really catapult individuals to success when it comes to those who have passed 3, but not the 4th test? But let's dive into that group now. Doug?
So just in the audience, what's preventing people from finishing the last GED test? Math, right? For the most part. Anything else? So what are other barriers that are preventing people from finishing their tests? Location? Yep. Yeah. Yep. So who said they're fed up, they give up, they're just done trying. Yeah, of course. So nationally, Laura pulled this from the GED testing service. This is 2022 data. Over 140,000 individuals have passed the 3 of 4 required GED tests, never finished a final test. And unsurprisingly, we see that for the 4th test remaining, 81% of people, it's their math test, with the RLA being the second at 11%, and then social studies, and then science. So no surprise there, of course. And for Maryland, our numbers are about, the percentage-wise, is about the same with the national data, which is unsurprising to us. So the GED math test can be difficult for learners, right? Now, it's aligned to the Common Core state standards, so it's not meant to be an easy test. It's meant to be rigorous. Math can often rely on abstract concepts that require sequential learning. So it's not that you can kind of pick and choose what you're going to learn. You have to learn how to solve a 1-step equation before you can solve a 2-step equation, right? You have to learn how to add and subtract fractions, and then you have to learn how to add and subtract fractions with different denominators. You have to build upon those skills. So it's another reason why it can be so difficult, is it can be so sequential. You have to build on your previous learning. Many math concepts center on the problem-solving skills that require multiple steps, which can be a challenge for some of our learners. And then there's just the general academic anxiety that they experience during school, which in many cases is tied to math. You can ask lots of children, what's your least favorite subject? Oh, math, I hate math, right? And then of course, the test anxiety and the difficulty with standardized assessments. We're very proud in Maryland that we have the National External Diploma Program and the Adult High School, which are other pathways, but the GED test is still the most common way. It has the name recognition, and that's what people think of. So if you're in a state, whether it's an equivalency, whether it's the diploma, when someone says GED, you know what that means. So for many people, they're like, I want to get my GED, I want to take the GED tests. So that's what they think of when they think of getting a high school equivalency, but they are high stakes standardized tests. Separate from the academic piece, life takes priority over education, right? Our learners are dealing with so many barriers to not just taking a test, but attending an adult education class. That can be their English language proficiency. That's a challenge for learners. Learners that are experienced that are not homeless students. I mean, that takes precedence over everything. Long-term unemployment or underemployment, income challenges, as well as childcare or dependent care concerns, taking care of their children, taking care of their parents, other family members. All of this stuff, for good reason, can get in the way of their education. And if you have a learner that is struggling with the last test, they're close to the finish line, but they're like, you know what? I don't have the time, the energy, or the money to put into this. And then, of course, access to courses can depend upon transportation if it's face-to-face. If it is online, virtual, asynchronous, that requires access to a device. And of course, during COVID, most families with children, there were lots of initiatives to get people devices, which was great. But for some families, there is one device. And of course, if you have a child that needs to do work on the device for school, the parents are usually going to say, okay, I will forego my studies because you need to get your homework done. So these are all challenges that our learners face. So what's Maryland's response, right? 4th and Goal initiative. And I'm going to turn it back over to Laura.
All right, thanks, Doug. And before I go any further, I do want to just really reinforce the fact that though these adult high school diploma options are, you could say, housed within the Maryland Department of Labor, our diplomas are co-signed by our Secretary of MD Labor and the State Superintendent of the Board of Education. So there really is a partnership existing with the Maryland Department of Labor and the Maryland State Department of Education. So we're, walking together down this journey. But going back to 4th and Goal, not to lose momentum there, and the forward rush, so to speak, we could go into all kinds of metaphors. As you see, we really, though, capitalized on the idea of football. And the reason for that is that, a relatable kind of sports image where individuals are, having these moments of success, these highlight, real moments in their own lives. But also due to the fact that we launched during football season of 2024. And we'll talk more about that when we go through the general discussion of our 4th and Goal program. So the wheel kind of reflects what we're going to be walking through at this point. The beginnings, the conceptualization of 4th and Goal, the policy behind it. We had the support of our policy unit at the Maryland Department of Labor. Because with this initiative came the opportunity for funding, which Doug is going to talk about in a moment. Messaging, we wanted to make sure to get the word far and wide about this opportunity. Ultimately, launching it into the world, the campaign, which did launch on September 16th, 2024. And then how we move forward with it presently, the operationalization of 4th and Goal. So starting with where it came from, where did this idea start? So again, we've been talking about that. We have in Maryland, as of the last report that we've run, 3,600, and that includes corrections, 3,600 learners who have passed 3 of their 4 GED tests. And that's really kind of juxtaposed with the 450,000 Marylanders thereabout who don't have a high school diploma. And, we know the impacts of all of that. So for those at the time, 3,500 when we, first launched the campaign, those who needed one more test to go in Maryland, we just see this opportunity to really, again, charge across the goal line. Sometimes some of the, hurdles, the issues that come into play are financial. And so we wanted to really address those through concept of 4th and Goal, being able to tackle some of those financial hurdles in addition to the academic supports that was important to our office. And so how did we go forward in terms of our development of this program? I'll turn it over to Doug for a moment.
So as Laura said, we are part of the Maryland Department of Labor, and the unit that we sit in, the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning, is actually the unit in the state that is in charge of Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. We owe funding for Titles 1, 2, and 3, Title 2 being adult education. Title 1 and 3 being adult dislocated worker, youth programming, Wagner, Pizer. If you're not in the workforce world, it's all basically the workforce funding that funds the local American Job Centers, supports local workforce development boards, et cetera. So as such, whenever we do a new initiative, we try to make sure we have as much connection with the workforce system as possible. I want to pause for a second. Ahu, was there something in the chat? Sure. Oh, no. So the question, if you didn't hear it, in the chat, there was a question about, is the 3,500 that need one test to go just for 1 year? And Laura, that's for since 2014, right? So since the GED test was changed in 2014, there were about 3,500 Marylanders that had passed 3 of 4. Okay, thank you. No, great question. So since we worked together with the workforce development system, there was the desire for us to make sure that we go through with a formal policy. So this was something new. This was not something that's part of our Title II where we already have procedures and so forth in place. It was decided that we would work with our policy unit that supports all of our workforce initiatives to make sure that we're doing this the right way and that we're addressing it for the system-wide. So policy, for our purposes, it defines the eligibility, the allowable activities, and the application process. So we were very fortunate that we were able to leverage some funding from the WIOA Governor Set-Aside Fund. So every state gets this, kind of discretionary part of their WIOA funding for workforce that they could do different initiatives with. And we were happy that we were approved to do this with Fourth and Goal funds. Our policy process in Maryland is that we go through a process of choosing subject matter experts. So we leveraged experts that represented community-based organizations that do adult education, our Title II funded adult education providers, their leadership, the local workforce development boards, representatives from the American Job Centers, from our state office, et cetera. And then the policy process, it's kind of boring and dry, but it's really important, is that basically we have an initial meeting to talk about what we're going to do. We want to have a policy and a process to determine how we can give funding out for Fourth and Goal initiative. Go through a first draft, we collect internal comments, gives us a second draft, and then we put that out to the public. So we made sure that when it was a public comment time, we sent this to all of our Title II agencies, our GED test centers, anyone that could be involved for their view, because this policy will determine the eligibility, how funding is done, et cetera, to make sure it's what works for Maryland. And then, of course, there's a final review. There's lots of people that have to sign off on it, and then we publish it. So that's basically the very dry, kind of boring way, but that makes sure that what we come up with is not just what Laura wants or what I want or our state director. It is what makes sense for the workforce system. And so the benefit of going through that policy process is that we end up with well-documented guidelines, rules, procedures to make sure that the funding works first and foremost for the learners that need this, but also that it's fair and equitable for all the agencies that could apply for this funding.
Yeah, and that accountability piece was really huge for us, being able to track all of that information. When the time came, we wanted to really spread this far and wide. We wanted to get the word out and have much fanfare. So part of that involved, direct outreach to the individuals whom this program really directly affects. Those who have passed 3 need 1 more to go. And so in that pool of direct outreach, we're talking about our, workforce listservs, our individuals, our adult education providers, not just the grant-funded adult ed providers, but all adult ed providers in Maryland. In total, it was about 8,000 emails. We went about it through, initially, the email route. As far as also going out on social media, we have X platforms, we have Facebook platforms and account, and we have LinkedIn. Am I missing any? Instagram. So we used all of our social media resources to have a week-long campaign. Again, this is during football season. This is the week of September 16th, 2024. We had, information, individual stories leading up to the following weekend where our governor, Wes Moore, put out a post about Fourth and Goal, which received a lot of notice and just general recognition. That post was then shared by the Baltimore Ravens. Again, we wanted to really encapsulate the theme and move that forward. And we also had local partners who posted and shared, feedback and just ultimately contributed to the overall excitement of the event. Our website for Fourth and Goal, fourth.goal, no, I'm sorry, that's our email address, but the website for the campaign went live on the day of the kickoff as well. And we have a newsletter in our office of adult education and literacy services called Between the Lines. The content about Fourth and Goal was published in that newsletter. So we really wanted to get the word out. We realize that to this day, there are still ways that we can work on getting the word out. Number one, probably being text messaging, just trying to really hit the target audience. And to that end, also just directing specific messages to those different populations and audiences, whether it's, those who are, 18 to 24, those who are, over the age of 55. I mean, we're going to have different maybe messages that are addressing the needs and the kind of desires at that point based on feedback that we've received. Also, something that was really a point of pride with this campaign was its actual launch. As Doug referenced earlier, we relied, we really rested on the partnerships that exist both internally and externally to have this campaign, the start of this campaign, be a dramatic success. And so we did have an event, a kickoff event at one of our local Title II community colleges in Anne Arundel Community College. They were actually the reason for the choice. They were they had already had some of the programming, the academic programming in place to support 3 of 4 test takers, math intensives specifically. They deliver those types of academic support, and they've done so historically since about 2016. So they were just primed for, being a part of this initiative. We had about 100 guests, a little over, key stakeholders, college leadership, community partners. We had a group of adult learners, a class of GED learners who'd come over for the event that morning. And we had other partners, other workforce stakeholders and folks from our State Department of Education. So we're invited. Student speakers were the highlight of the event. I will say hands down, hearing from the students who'd struggled with one test to go and them, sharing their stories really encapsulated, I think, the day. And in fact, we've got 2 featured here. If I go from left to right, Perketer Tucker, our Director of Adult Education at the Maryland Department of Labor. I'm going to draw a blank, but I believe that is the president of Anne Arundel Community College. The woman in the middle of the photo, blonde hair, she is one of the students who successfully completed her 4th test, and she actually shared her story. Our Secretary of the Maryland Department of Labor, Portia Wu, Kermit, the gentleman with the football, he also shared his story. Very, very, impactful and motivating to hear their stories. And then the vice provost, I believe. Yes. Oh, great question. Were the student speakers had they already passed, or were they in the campaign presently? They had already gone through their classes at Anne Arundel Community College and had passed. So they were really reflecting on their journey to get, I would say, to share the message, particularly for those students who are in the crowd, to really encourage them to keep moving despite, challenges. So good question. And we had words from the leadership present. Okay, so a lot of moving pieces, a lot of parts that we wanted to just really fine tune and explain. Our policy handled that very, very beautifully. But in terms of how we executed on Fourth and Goal, we had 2 levels. We had individuals who could come directly to the fund, apply, and what they would receive is a free practice test, a free ready assigned through their GED.com account. And depending on their score, if they received a likely to pass, they would then receive a free operational test, again, using GED Direct. We didn't want to employ vouchers. They were a little harder to track, so we used GED Direct. Generally, that's been working pretty well. The one kind of hiccup is the retest piece, but we're still kind of working through that. A lot of individuals who weren't successful with their first test attempt, their first official test attempt, are now in programs to get to the point where, they are ready. And so in a way, they've kind of transitioned over from tier 1, which are the individual applicants, to tier 2. What tier 2 looks like is programs who applied, programs who wanted to structure educational courses, tutoring specifically around the subjects that individuals who need one more test, would most benefit. And clearly it's generally math, a lot of math intensives, a lot of math tutoring, and math courses. So that is kind of what our tier 2 providers are looking at when we're talking about fourth and goal. So any individual who was a tier 1 applicant who, was maybe not close to passing, was maybe, in that too close to call range or not likely, they would be referred to one of our adult ed programs. And by referred, what I mean is provided options. We don't want to just, while we do, really value the contributions of our Title II providers, we wanted to provide as much option as possible. What's going to work best for that individual? So having those conversations, when the time came, when individuals applied, they weren't successful in terms of their practice test, how do we move forward? Well, we had conversations. It wasn't going to be a one-size-fits-all, one-stop shop. So, individuals were expressing the need for tutoring, for example. So maybe we would refer to them to agencies that we knew provided tutoring based on location and other factors. So the timeline, the overall timeline for fourth and goal, we're now in our, approximately 7th month of the initiative. We started, well, no, that's not true, a little over if you want to start from inception. We started our policy meetings in late June of 2024. In terms of like the kickoff planning, in terms of, developing the policy and publishing the policy, which happened in early September. In fact, the kickoff meeting, the policy, the website all went live on the launch, which was the 16th. And here we are, we had our initial blast, our initial directed source of email contact with the learners, 36 or 3,500, I guess, at the time. We, I think right away got about 100 interested applicants. So they were, assigned their practice tests and so on. But, of course, it started to trickle after a while. And so we just had a second wave. It was late February, I believe. No, mid-March, apparently. We had a second wave of email blasts that went out to not just those who maybe didn't engage the first time, but individuals who had become 3 or 4 test takers in that span from September to mid-March. So we had a second wave, and that generated, another, I would say, probably 80 individuals who stepped forth and say, I want to take part. Really, it's just a way to, funding aside, the campaign itself was extremely successful, bringing folks in, letting them know of the services that exist in terms of preparation for the GED test, whether it's programming through adult ed providers, whether it's, kind of just that motivational piece that we were talking about earlier, in terms of combating why folks don't maybe feel as successful and kind of get stuck in that third test, really just being able to tackle some of those topics. So where are we now today? Doug will help explain that.
Yeah, so the good stuff. So what have we achieved so far, right? Because it's been less than a year. So our success lies in our data. So one of the big things was the campaign itself. As Laura said, funding aside, if we'd had no money to support this other than our staff time, we still think we would have been successful in this initiative, because some of it was literally just, we know you only have one test to go. We care about making sure you cross that finish line. So for some learners, it was just reaching out like, yeah, you know what, I gave up on it. They got to talk to Laura or to Lynette in our office personally, be like, what's your story? Well, let's get you a GED ready test. Hey, you are ready. Let's get you that test. Very, very little financial investment in that part. It was more of the, hey, we're checking up on you. We want you to do this. So measuring the website traffic. So from September 15th to October 1st, we had 3,500 visits to the Fourth and Goal website, averaging 234 a day. As you can imagine, visiting the Maryland Department of Labor website is not necessarily the most popular website for people to visit. So we take that as a big success that we definitely had interest. And it was a 20% increase over our general website traffic for our division, right, for the Division of Workforce Development and Adult Learning. So that was a great, that by itself shows us that, okay, people were at least paying attention to the social media campaign, the kickoff, et cetera. As far as the program outcome, as of April 1st, we've had 141 graduates that have come through this. So keep in mind, these are completely separate in terms of the graduates that are going through our Title II regular adult education programs. These are people that have contacted Laura in her office, either directly through the Tier 1, they got their ready, they took the test, they passed, or contacted her, they got their ready, they weren't quite ready, they got referred to one of the adult education programs. 141 have graduated already. We're extremely happy. It's 141 lives that we've impacted just by doing a lot of outreach and messaging. We've had 300 individual applications. And like I said, this came all the way back from 2014. So these could be people that gave up 10 years ago, but their test is still valid and we still want them to complete. We've had 6 adult education provider applications for our Tier 2. This is still ongoing. It's still a rolling application. Our time frame was 2 years, right? So this initiative, the initial investment was a 2-year investment. So we still have plenty of time. Some of the applications come from our Title II providers, so they want to augment their funding, and some come from providers that have never received state or federal funding for their programs. They just provide these services as a local community-based organization. They're looking to, they're like, hey, a little extra money would really help us. We're happy to make that connection for them, so that's been great. Of the 300 individual applications, unsurprisingly, 83% of those needed math. I think that was slightly higher than the national average of 81. The average age of the applicant was 36, and the applications span 18 jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. So basically from Western Maryland and the mountains to the Eastern Shore through the Baltimore, DC corridor, the applications are all over the place. Obviously the data is great, but also having some information from our grads is also important. So I just want to read this one quote from a student, Nicolene. Remember, it's never too late to chase your dreams and rewrite your story. The road may not always be easy, but every step forward, no matter how small, brings you closer to your goals. You've proven that resilience can overcome any challenge. Believe in yourself because you have the power to achieve greatness. The world is full of opportunities waiting for you to take the first step. Keep going, you've got this. This was from a learner. We didn't write this for the learner. This was their testimonial to us, so we really value that.
Yeah, and recently, again, we try to leverage all of the outreach resources that we have at our disposal, those that are, fairly no cost, essentially. And on our social media threads, we wanted to really get the word out, too, about, 6 months in, what's the success of Fourth and Goal? So we had a learner come forth who, bravely volunteered to use her name, image, and things on our social media, discussing her experiences with Fourth and Goal and earning her high school diploma. So reading out, earning my high school diploma is a huge accomplishment for me. I was taken out of school in the 7th grade due to some unfortunate circumstances within my family, and I struggled into my adult years feeling confident with knowing I never graduated. I started the process in 2021, and finally, after 3 years, passed my final test on November 15th, 2024. It was the best feeling in the world to be able to finally say I am a high school graduate, and it has opened the door for me to start my dream career in law enforcement. So hearing those, of course, testimonies really underscores the value of the program.
So what did we learn? So one of the things we learned is about the program design itself. So streamlining intake was something that was definitely a lesson learned here. So keeping in mind alternate assessment models, which is something we're going to work on more in this coming year, is important. And also making sure that we're identifying where a learner is at that moment and what they need. Our adult education Title II programs in Maryland do a great job. But I've worked in, all of us have worked in Title II programs in our state. And in some cases, especially if it's a large program, there's a large intake process. There's a lot of students that come through. And in some cases, you kind of have to triage, like, okay, we're going to get you assessed. You're going to go over here. We're going to get you going over here. You do an online class. You do an in-person class. You do a hybrid. That's all great. Sometimes people fall through the cracks. So this program really helped us to think about how do I identify where the learner is at that moment and how do we reach out to them? And that's why I keep harping on the money's great, but really it was that outreach. It was that social media campaign to say, hey, you might have gone through all it. And some of the learners, I'm sure, were like, yeah, you know what? I went to this program, didn't really work for me. It's like, okay, let's try something else, right? If that didn't work for you, I'm not saying that's a failure on that program, but let's try something else. That was really important.
Okay, so one question again from Elena. Since students had to apply to the e campaign on the 3rd, was there an incentive offered outside of securing diploma?
So the question was, since learners had to apply to be part of this, was there an incentive? So there was no incentive outside of the diploma. The incentive would be, you give us your information. It was a Google form, so we tried to make it as simple as possible. They could do it from their phone, they could do it from tablet, do it from their computer. We get their information. Laura and her team would verify that they are, a 3 or 4 learner, and then give them a free GED ready. Yeah, so that's an incentive. We give them a free GED ready test itself, and then if they are ready, if their score says they're ready, they also get the free GED test. In Maryland, we do have a system where, and I'm not as familiar with it, where learners do get a free GED test. What is that?
No, it's reduced. But
Reduced price, yeah.
At this point, they will have taken it.
Yeah, so people can get like a reduced cost for their GED test, but for these learners, they've already kind of gone past that. So this is another kind of incentives that their GED test would be paid for. So great question. And then, like I said before, the traditional adult basic education course structure doesn't work for everyone. And so this is a way for us to kind of say, okay, how can we both challenge our providers, but also how can we, at the state office, make sure we're setting everyone up for success to try something different that works? And then, of course, considering what works. For some people, it's an in-person class. Some people, it's an online class, hybrid. Maybe some people do better with asynchronous instruction. Maybe some people need that one-on-one tutoring. And the nice thing about the Tier 2 programs is that they get to tell us how they want to deliver those services. It can be tutored. It doesn't have to be under what the Title II structure is. It's like, what do you propose? And then we would fund them accordingly.
Kentucky offers free to all first-time test takers in each subject, and we provide vouchers for the GED test to our program.
So the comment in the chat was that Kentucky provides free GED tests for first-time test takers and then vouchers for the GED ready, right? Yeah, every state handles it differently. I think it was New Mexico that just got their state legislature to invest several million to provide that case, GED and HiSET completely free across the board for all their learners. Everyone handles that differently. Of course, it costs money. So that's always the big holdup. So yeah, it's great to hear the different models that are in place.
Okay, and I just wanted to, before I go into another lesson learned, I just want to also share that it was, going back to Doug's comment about the messaging piece, like that was huge, like being able to have opportunities to speak about Fourth and Goal, whether it was, come attend this virtual information session about Fourth and Goal, and that was put out to maybe the adult ed providers. Working with, there was no finer moment for me than hearing our own Maryland adult and continuing college and, the Maryland Adult Education Association, having them come forward and say, we want you to talk about Fourth and Goal. We want to assist in getting the word out about Fourth and Goal. Having others use the Fourth and Goal campaign jargon and language and really just driving the message home was huge. Maryland Association for Adult, Community, and Continuing Education, MACE. Okay. And so another lesson was, what do our adult learners need in order to be successful? Like, it's wonderful to, have someone come forth. They've, maybe it's just dropped off their radar in terms of needing that high school diploma, but now they're back, they're ready, they're in the likely to pass zone, great. And then they, get their free official test through Fourth and Goal, they pass, they earn their Maryland High School Diploma, great, wonderful. That's a, awesome circumstance, but that's not everybody's circumstance. And so what we've been hearing, of course, a lot of feedback involves, how to get folks across the finish line, whether it's financial, whether it's need of childcare, transportation being a large issue. So for what Fourth and Goal affords to programs, specifically, Tier 2 programs, is the opportunity to provide, to build in these supports into their programming, transportation assistance, maybe some Uber vouchers or Lyft vouchers, that kind of thing, in order for individuals to take their test. Having more flexibility in terms of offering tutorials and things of that nature where individuals can attend, based on their schedule as opposed to the standard, class schedule. And also having the opportunity to really connect with learners. Sometimes they're just not aware of the support that exists in the state of Maryland. And so having that opportunity to have those one-on-one conversations really assisted in terms of getting our support out there. Doug?
And then the other big lesson is time, right? It takes time to do this and to do it well. So one of the things when it comes with working with other agencies, even within our own department, is making sure that we allow plenty of time to plan. So this discussion came up in like March, April of last year. And like, to be honest with you, we were like, let's just go for it because that's what we do. Like let's just do it now. But to really get the buy-in from the rest of the workforce system at the state, to do the policy process, to make sure that we secure the funding, even though it's not a ton of funding, that takes time. So we really, at the state office, we had to really make sure we took the time to do that. And then even once it was available and on the street, our providers needed time to be like, can I take this on? Can I work on it? So making sure it was a rolling in mission was really important. Our Title II funding is very structured. Starts in July and ends at the end of June every year, right? Whether it's a continuation cycle, competitive. This is something that could start at any time and last for 12 months. And so giving them the time to think it through and ask us questions like can I braid this funding? That takes time. So that was really important. And we had to learn how to stay nimble, but also make sure we were really structured in our communication. And then of course the interagency planning, as I said, within labor, making sure that we're patient and also making sure that we document what the benchmarks are, but then also enjoy that, like that we also take the time to really publish it. I know Laura gives leadership, our leadership in Department of Labor updates regularly on where we're at. And sometimes it's like, over the past month, we only had a handful of new learners, no new tier 2. That's okay. We just keep it going. So it's like, don't forget about us. We're very much supported in the Department of Labor, but with the Department of Labor, everyone thinks of workforce, unemployment insurance, et cetera. And we're like, hey, we're adult ed, we're here too, right? And so this is another way for us to really say, don't forget about us. We're really key part of the workforce system. And that brings us to the end. So I want to open it up to if anyone has any questions for us. While you're thinking about that, this QR code takes you to the Fourth and Goal website on our labor page, right? Our website is labor.maryland.gov. The overall one, our adult education program is labor.maryland.gov/adult literacy. And then the Fourth and Goal is ae4thgoal.shtml. I'll leave that up for a minute. And then if anything's in the chat, please tell Ahu. Thank you very much. Yep. Yeah, great. Okay. Really, thank you for joining us this morning. I know it's early on the last day of the conference. If you have questions, if you want to talk through anything, just let us know. But otherwise, hope you enjoy the last day of the conference and in Dallas. And then if you're traveling far to get home, we hope that you have a safe flight or safe drive.
Yes, thanks everyone for attending. Bye online.